Welcome to tonight's Monday, March 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting. Kelly, will you please take the roll?
Sure. Mayor McEachran.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Here.
Councilor Tabor.
Present.
Councilor Cook.
Here.
Councilor Denton.
Here.
Councilor Blaylock.
Present.
Councilor Bagley.
Here.
Councilor Moreau is absent this evening. Councilor Lombardi.
Here.
Before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and thank you, Kelly, just like to recognize the passing of Karen Parrott, longstanding member of the community, and our hearts go out to the entire Parrott family. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, we first have up to bat is the Portsmouth High School boys alpine ski team, and their winning of a second straight Division I championship. Just stand so we can recognize the folks in the room really quickly. So it's been a bit since I've been skiing, but I went to King Pine recently with my daughter, and I ate it like second run in. So congrats, guys, on being the best of Portsmouth. Portsmouth, for those that weren't following along, scored 733 points in the 18-team field, besting second place Bedford by 17 points and third place Keene by 45. Their coach, Kyle Harrison, said this is a real team effort, and what's seen as an individual sport. They all pulled together, with Jack Martin placing second in the giant slalom in a combined time of 1 minute, 22.68 seconds to bring it home. Coach Harrison said, "This is a great group of boys who worked very hard throughout the season, riding a bus to the mountains multiple afternoons a week, juggling academics, and ultimately winning their second straight state championships." I'd like to, before I get to congratulating all the individual achievements, just you learn a lot from all sorts of things in academics. It's great to see that our athletics department does as well as you can do. This world is a pretty tough place, and by choosing to do hard things and competing at the highest level is a hard thing. You guys learn a whole lot and make us all want to push just a little bit further. So really excited to be able to pass out some Mayor's Awards. And we're going to go in order here. Let's see, how am I going to do this?
First group.
Yep, so first, congratulations. And if you guys, so we'll take a picture afterwards. If you could just come up, grab the award, and then we'll all take a picture together. Does that sound like a plan? All right, I'm nodding, but I guess I'm the one who comes up with the plan. First, congratulations to Jack Martin. Next up is Nick Davis. I got this too, so you can do a handshake here. Sorry.
Some people like number 2.
All right. Next up is Ryan Irvin. Then we have Will Didius. Hold the dais.
Yeah.
There you go.
Then Henry Highland. Charlie Rudig. And Riley Collins. All right. And we also want, it's a big team sport, so we have Alex Marvin as well. Alex, you here? He's not? All right. How about Theo Marvin? You related? All right.
Don't push play like said
Next, Lincoln Silverman. Connor Williams. Leo McNeely. That's a tough handshake, Leo. Eiler Peabody. Trip Giannini. Trip, how do you say your last name? Giannini. All right. All right, close enough. I'm joking. McCachran's a tough one. Richard Combs. Calder Barr. Is Calder here? All right, well, we also have, so give these guys a round of applause. So we have the coaches here. I see one. So do we have coaches, let's see, Kyle Harrison, you're here? Excellent. Adam Rudig, yep, Adam's here. Jackson Cole. James. Okay, all right. All right, we'll come down.
You're real cozy. Yeah. Like this.
You sure?
Cause isn't it?
That's a lot of kids to have on a bus.
No cause, huh?
Skiing?
No cause.
No cause, no fun.
So Cause sends his regards. Always loves coming to these, but had a personal commitment to take him away tonight. If there are some folks that want to clear out, we will allow that to happen. All right. All right, well, we have the acceptance. I will wait a motion to, or we have the acceptance of minutes. I'd wait a motion to accept.
I move to accept the January 21st, 2025 and February 3rd, 2025 minutes.
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, we have it's under recognitions and volunteer committee reports, but it is, I think it's out walking in, unless that's another photo over there. It's exciting, Carl Hyatt's photo, S1, and it is a pleasure to accept this museum quality photo for display in City Hall, where there's some nice painted walls out there, where the City of Portsmouth joins the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and the Smithsonian, among others, who collect Carl Hyatt's photographs. S1 from his Portsmouth Salt Pile series is now part of the city's collection of art and is an example of the enormous range of art for the public to discover displayed in and around our municipal buildings, even right here on the main floor of City Hall. But what I love about this photograph, and I see Nathan getting ready to unveil with Sean there, is the subject, Working Port of Portsmouth. To place this dramatic piece front and center, to make art of the subject speaks to who we are, to our history, to the working world our community has faced for the past 400 years and before. It also speaks to our motto, the city of the open door. The freighters that bring the salt to the salt piles travel from Peru and Chile, connecting Portsmouth to a global trade, and the salt itself keeps the doors of New Hampshire, that is our roads and sidewalks, open. It is a wonderful story of the cycle of daily working life in Portsmouth, all captured in one elegant photograph by an inspired man with a unique perspective that he shares so generously with all of us. Please join me in thanking Carl Hyatt for this work that celebrates our salt piles as the icons they are, and thanks to our Public Art Review Committee for letting us remind everyone who comes into City Hall of the legacy of the working port, of the open door, and the artistic community that inspires us all. Let her rip, guys. Would you like to say a few words? I'd like to say a few. And if you could just speak into the microphone so the words can be heard at home as well.
All right. This microphone. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yep, that's the one. This feels a little bit like an Oscar speech because I have a lot of people to thank.
There's no music in here. But
Well,
we do have a
that's
timer.
okay. Going through this process, I've never been through this process of being part of donating a print to a city like this, to a government like this, to my hometown, and I feel deeply privileged. I've been here since 1985. I fell in love with this city. It's just such a privilege to be able to live in a place that you really love every day. And this is, one dimension of that. But I would like to thank, first of all, City Council. Thank you very much for taking this on, and the various people. Karen Kennard, I know that you had a big part in this. Suzanne Woodland, Sean, of course, Chris Dwyer, who has participated in promoting the arts for years and years and years, and that is, for all of the artists, I know that's deeply important because arts are one of the first things to get cut in various decisions. I also want to thank Granite State Minerals. Back in 1985 when I moved here in 85, but I started on the salt piles in 1989. So I've been photographing them for about 30 years. Not continuously, but the first 5 or 6 years I tore into it. I was down there like a mascot every morning. And back then, of course, it was before 9/11, so security was, not so much. So I could just walk in, I had free reign. Things have changed a little bit, but I still have a wonderful relationship with Granite State Minerals, and I'm very appreciative for their giving me access to their property. As I said, getting to be able to live in the place that I love and also to do the work that I love is a huge privilege. I'm always inspired when I come in here by this wonderful painting from like 1830 on the back wall, which I think is really wonderful because you can stand there and really feel your way into it. You know, use your imagination. It's not just a picture of the bridge and the river. I mean, there's really a spirit there. And that is what I'm looking for in my photographs. Yes, it's salt piles, but hopefully it's more than salt piles. And briefly, how this picture got taken or how the salt piles started, my basic inspiration is nature. So I am always looking at nature, but I love New England weather. These dramatic skies, that's what I was after on this particular afternoon in the late 1980s. So I was running up and down the river with my big 8x10 view camera, looking for a foreground that would allow me to just take those clouds. Because you can't, you know, as a photographer, it's all got to work. You know, whatever's in the foreground, whatever's in the background, everything's got to come together and work. So I was looking for a foreground to get my things. So I ran into the salt piles, and I just went, oh, the salt piles, they're in my way. This is not what I want. But after that day, I started to notice the salt piles, which I had driven by 1,000 times before. And I started to notice the light on them, the varying shapes. And of course I'm a black and white photographer. They are, of course, the perfect subject for black and white photography. I sometimes think of the salt piles kind of like a white face on mime. You know, it's blank, but because it's blank, it can take on all kinds of emotions. It can communicate many things other than a blank face, or almost like a Japanese Zen garden. And that 2 or 3 acres of Granite State Minerals is like a Zen garden for me. And just being down there year after year after year, the more you work, the more you see. That's the way art goes. That's the way life goes.
Yeah.
So I thought I would share that. So then they became, you know, one of the biggest bodies of work of my 50-year career after, you know, overlooking them initially.
Well said.
Okay.
Can we have a picture? If there are members of the art review committee here, I see Chris. Would you join us for a photo?
Yeah, I think so.
Go.
I'm not moving.
Right. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3.
A little intimidated taking a picture of the photographer when he has this big No. What? Okay, so you're gonna
Huh?
those for their performance.
Yeah.
did they? Oh, no. Just begging for trouble. Okay.
All right, we are done. So before we go on to public comment, and I see that there's a lot of folks that are listed for school budget. Thank you for coming out this evening. I'm going to ask to take or suspend, or a motion to suspend the rules to take the motion that is under my name and move it up into the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the reason I would like to do that, and it's always, I guess 12 and a half, 1 dozen. It's tough to hear public comment versus before or after. A lot of folks are wanting to talk about this. Had some conversations today with Nathan Lunny and our finance, Dr. Zach McLaughlin, the superintendent, and Karen Conard, city manager. And I wanted to bring everybody up to speed as best we could so that folks understand. Not that you can't say everything that you're wanting to say. We encourage all of that and love when we come out and get engaged on the school, but do want to make sure that folks understand at least where we are right now in the budget process, so that hopefully if you don't change anything that you're about to say, or if you do, totally fine, but I wanted to share what we talked about. There are some immovable objects in our budget. Those immovable objects are things like out-of-district placements. Now, the out-of-district placements are not only mandated on federal and state, they're good for the students to make sure that they're getting the education that they are constitutionally awarded. And in New Hampshire, we believe that that is something that is important and worth fighting for. It's really difficult to ask departments in order to meet budget expectations when things are outside of their control. And much like here in the city of Portsmouth, where we have, it's a quote, unlimited welfare budget. So anybody that's coming and seeking assistance in the city of Portsmouth, we can't turn anybody away there. Those are two budget drivers that are going to be looked at separately as best we can from the overall conversation. Second, I've heard that there are some accepting of early retirements. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole budget conversation because this is specifically for the school board under our charter to come up with, and they bring that back to us. But this allows us to have a conversation around the budget that aligns to some of the expectations while recognizing some of the things that we have asked are not possible given the financial constraints of the requirements that you guys or the school department is facing. And so with that, I will not be putting forth a request for a meeting before the budget is, or before the budget process. Two reasons for that. First reason, we have a process, and the process is good, and the intentions around this were to have a conversation, but the process being what it is the school board makes their decisions, and we want to let the school board make those decisions as best that they can. Two, I don't think that we are in the same position that we were previously. And, as a guy that, went to Portsmouth schools and raising a kid in the Portsmouth school, it's tough to read, some of the articles and not feel, get emotional around that. I don't think we're in that position in terms of the budget any longer. And so with that, going to be withdrawing that motion to create that, and we're going to go out through the normal process. We're going to hear the school board. The school board's going to vote on their budget, and we are going to have a conversation around their budget. And I think that conversation is going to be effective. And the reason why, I think maybe there's heightened sensitivity, not this year when it comes to school, but in budgets in general, is that we had a revaluation. It was difficult for a lot of folks in Portsmouth as commercial didn't keep pace with residential. And we have a responsibility, if we care about government, if we care about education, to make sure that we are doing those as efficiently as possible. Now, there's things that are outside of that that simply have to be looked at separately, and that's what we're going to do going forward on this, hopefully with the support of the council. But we don't need this meeting. So with that, since there's no motion, I am happy to now have public comment, but I wanted to share that because that was late breaking as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we will now go back to public comment unless there's somebody else from the council that'd like to say something this time. All right. So first up we have Brianna Martin.
And Your Honor, is it okay if I direct folks on Zoom if you
Oh, yeah, you
wish
gotta
to
raise your
speak?
hand on
Please
Zoom.
raise your virtual hand. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm thrilled to hear that it sounds like we'll be listening to the Portsmouth School Department, their educating team, their assessment of student needs to help drive the budget. I'm going to do my best to amend my, I was organized, but now my
You
thoughts
can
are
just
gonna-
lay it out.
I'll
There's
just-
not-
We'll put it out there, but I'm here as a lifelong Portsmouth resident, a graduate of the Portsmouth school system, and a parent of 2 students currently attending Portsmouth schools. I'd like to start by acknowledging any Portsmouth school staff who are in attendance this evening, particularly those who have been feeling vulnerable to the potential position cuts that the proposed school budget cap, which it sounds like maybe is no longer on the table, would necessitate. I am deeply dismayed that this is something that you need to be preparing for, and I hope that you all know that you are seen and appreciated. I'm here to speak out against the proposed budget cap for the Portsmouth School District. It's my understanding that capping the budget at an under 3% increase would lead to an unprecedented number of staff layoffs within the PSD. Again, very glad to hear that that's not the direction we're going any longer. Given that the City Council and School Department have already determined current staffing levels to be appropriate for the current school year, and that there are no indicators of a significant enrollment decrease in the coming year, this would ask schools to function at a staffing level that has already been determined to be insufficient to support current needs. School-aged children today bring a complexity of need that requires expertise and coordinated care beyond what we have seen in previous generations. Over the course of my 16 years as an educator, I cannot recall a worse time to cut back on staffing for schools. Portsmouth schools are not operating with excessive or wasteful funding. To be honest, I have seen higher staffing ratios in districts with significantly fewer resources than Portsmouth. One example of this would be in many school districts within the state, every kindergarten classroom has a standing paraeducator. That's not something that we have in Portsmouth, and I find that shocking. Our cost per student is typical for the general area, and in fact significantly lower than that of surrounding towns with schools such as Rye and Northampton, both of which have an average cost per pupil of over $31,000 at the elementary level, as compared with $25,000 to $28,000 at Portsmouth elementary schools. As we all know, property values have skyrocketed in Portsmouth over recent years, leading to an increase in home values that homeowners can appreciate, while at the same time generating property tax bills that can be unmanageable for some longtime residents. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. However, I reject that the solution to this problem is to take necessary resources away from the youth in our community. City councilors, we have elected you to address this issue, and I know that you can do better than suggesting that the response to high property taxes is cutbacks in spending on education. No community benefits from having an undereducated population. The Archbishop Desmond Tutu described education as not only a moral imperative, but an economic necessity in its capacity to build the good of all within a community. We need to continue to invest in our community as a whole by investing in the education of our youth. I strongly urge you to continue to listen to the educators in the school department and accept their proposed budget, not an arbitrary budget cap based on anything other than what students actually need. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Brianna. Next up is Aaron Baucom.
Erin Baucom. I had this timed and ready for 2 minutes and 57 seconds, and it's out the window. I am the president of the Association of Portsmouth Teachers. I am a resident and taxpayer, and I'm a 26-year veteran of the Education Department. And one of the things, I appreciate everyone's hard work in getting some answers today and some things figured out. I'm challenged with the timeline and some of the communication that's happened. And I'm hoping that we can figure out a more collaborative way to find needs financially from the city sooner, that we can work with the school board, because we had a number of staff that were let know on Friday before vacation that their positions were not secure for the next year. We have 2 young teachers in the 7th grade at the middle school who were just heartbroken. And to put them through this, and there were some very excited phone calls that I gave earlier this evening, but I want to think about how do we have this communication happen better or sooner so that we're not left in these spots. And we, by April 1 in a contract, we have to let staff know if they're not going to be returning for the next year. And what happens with your budget process not taking place until later in April and then not concluding until June, for teachers, they've missed the spring hiring season. So they were really left feeling like, I have to go out looking for jobs. And I understand that. And I couldn't tell them, like, don't worry about it. We're going to work it out. We're going to work it out. We just didn't have that kind of assurance at this point. When I started, new teachers, we were automatically basically not given a contract until the end. And people told us they always figure it out. They figure it out. Don't worry, they're going to figure it out. I honestly didn't feel I could say that to our young staff members. So I'm hoping that as we work through this process, that we can figure out a way so that we don't end up in this timeline pinch where we're frantically notifying people that, look, we have to make these cuts. This is what looked like it's going to happen. And then come back and be like, okay, there's not extra spending that we can curtail to change that. And I'm happy that with retirement incentives and the other pieces that I think we're looking at cutting as much as we can. I really want people to understand our fixed costs and also rising special education costs, rising transportation costs, rising services that we need in the district, looking at the number of children coming in that require additional services. Those are things that we can't change. And with the Department of Education and some of the attacks that we're looking at, it's a really hard time for education right now. So I'm hoping that we figure out how to work on the timeline in a way that we can address this so that we don't get to these points. I'm very pleased at hearing some of the news of where we got, so I thank you for sharing that. That was great news to get at this point. But I just hope to keep the dialogue open and try and figure this out sooner before we get to these points. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. You still did good on time, even
Teacher,
though. Yeah.
I like the clock.
Next up is Lisa Rappaport, school board member. Is Lisa here?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I also threw out my comments. I'm starting over. So I would first say that while I am never pleased to see us lose any staff from our schools, I mean, every single one of them makes a huge impact on so many kids every day, and that's not a great position for us to be in. I'm also a taxpayer and a resident and a business owner, and I appreciate that it's challenging to get those reevaluations. I know we're doing budget crunches at my kitchen table this year and trying to figure all that out, and I'm sure many people in Portsmouth are. I would say that I agree we need to work collaboratively between the school board and the city council to come up with a more sustainable timeline for figuring out our budget expectations, because beyond what's already been mentioned, we've also spent the last couple of years working very hard on a strategic plan for the schools and working on curriculum planning. And it's very hard for us to put all the time and resources financially and in terms of personnel into doing those processes and then get to this point where I see people on these lists who've taken buyouts who kind of played really key roles in helping us to achieve some of the goals that we all agreed as a community that we valued. And as a parent, I'm also very cognizant of the fact that this process has been hard on not just teachers, but also on kids. You know, my child saw their math teacher in the newspaper, and that's not a conversation you want to have, and I'm very grateful that this teacher will still be with us, but we don't want to put teachers through that, and we don't want to put kids through that. And kids are also registering for classes before this budget process goes out. So there are teachers on this list who teach classes that I believe my high schooler was going to sign up for next year, who, you know, don't necessarily appear to be being replaced. So I completely respect that this is a tough time for everybody, not just in Portsmouth, but all over the country in terms of figuring out how to balance our budgets and be respectful of taxpayers' needs. But, you know, we have always been a city that values education. I mean, my family moved here for the schools. You know, we pay our taxes and figure out how to make those bills work because we believe in public education and we want to live in a community that values education. So I completely understand why perhaps a work session right at this moment maybe doesn't seem necessary, but I wonder in the future if there would be a way for us to have a more thoughtful conversation about how to better collaborate together so that when the schools are doing long-term planning, we're doing it in a way that aligns with what the council wants us to be spending, And also, so when you set your budget priorities, you understand how those are going to impact what our priorities are for the curriculum. Because our biggest expenses are our people. So when we lose people, that automatically is going to change what we can teach and how we can run the schools. And I think the last thing I would say is that I wish, as, you know, just a community member, you know, sorry, I'll leave it there because I wrote it and threw it out. I'll let others go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Next up is Kathleen Slover.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Slover. I'm at 346 Richards Ave. Just giving the parent perspective here. I have two sons who went through the Portsmouth Public Schools. My first son struggled through elementary school. He has ADHD and nonverbal learning disability. One of his early reports said it is a concern that these things may impact his ability to be successful. After researching private schools, I realized many schools were not only ill-equipped to deal with the kids with learning differences, but wouldn't even accept a student diagnosed with ADHD or even a learning disability. Fast forward to his sophomore year at Portsmouth High School. His report said he's a personable, eager, hardworking student. When focused and engaged, he's a leader who sets great examples and always contributes positively to class. My son will graduate Colby Sawyer College next year and is a proud member of the New Hampshire National Guard. Son number 2, different kid, different learner. He was a well-rounded student and didn't struggle in the early years, but by sophomore, junior year at PHS, he decided to focus on history and English, taking more challenging, higher-level classes in these subjects. He applied to Boston University, his stretch school, because it only has a 10 to 15% acceptance rate. Due to his hard work and also due to the rigor that PHS provided, he was accepted to Boston University and is now a freshman in the Global Studies program. Both kids not only succeeded, but thrived in the public schools, prepared to be contributing citizens of our community and prepared to compete and contribute on the world stage. I tell you this not to brag, but to illustrate that these results could only have happened in the public schools. Only in the public schools students of all learning styles and capabilities get the chance to succeed. My son's needs were different. One needed more intervention in the early years, the other needed more rigor in the later years. In both cases, it takes well-trained, well-compensated staff and funding for services and programs for students struggling and those who need a challenge. And in some cases, that student is the same student. On multiple occasions, I've provided similar testimony to illustrate the importance and success of public school to our New Hampshire state legislature, where lawmakers have tried to gut public education and shirk the state's responsibility to provide funding for it. You can imagine my dismay, my disheartenment, and my frustration when I came back from Concord after being there for 5 hours to provide testimony to read that our own city council had taken a play out of this playbook and created a cap for spending that essentially matches cost of living adjustment. Public education should be celebrated in our community. The council should be asking, what can we do and to help our public schools, not what the public schools can cut for us. Please reconsider the cap. Sounds like you already did, and I hope you take this story to heart and think about that when you do budgets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next, School Board Member Byron Maddow.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Byron Maddow, 17 Fields Road. There seems to be this understanding that the cap has been reconsidered, but to my understanding, I don't know that that's happened so far. So as far as I'm understanding, there's still a 2.9% cap as guidance from the council. So as a member of the Portsmouth School Board, I want to acknowledge the difficult budgetary process we've been navigating and the thoughtful efforts from the administration to manage the financial constraints placed upon us. I say placed because ultimately these constraints were downstream reality of guidance from this council. A tool the superintendent is employing is offering buyouts for individuals at the highest rung of the salary step process. And while this offers the biggest budget reduction for those individuals taking the buyout, it also means losing tenured and celebrated members of our education and our community. Again, losses that are a direct result of guidance from this council. And just to be clear, that's already happened. That's a done deal. Those folks have taken the buyout. The number of individuals who have taken the buyout stands at 11, and it includes individuals from all levels of the organization, 3 classroom teachers from elementary level, a middle school tech ed, high school Italian and French, and more. And while some of these positions will be refilled, the superintendent's memo outlines that 8 positions will be permanently reduced from the initial proposed continuing services budget to meet the 2.9% guidance from this council. So while this approach has prevented the immediate need for quote-unquote layoffs, make no mistake, as it stands, our schools will be weaker next year. And our students will have fewer resources, a direct result of guidance from this council. I look back and think about what some of the counselors have said in regards to the guidance, and maybe this isn't the exact number we get to, but it's a good exercise. And while I see on the surface while that might be a reasonable thought, at this point I have to disagree. We have yet to pass a budget at the school board level, and you all have yet to pass a budget at the council level. Yet here we are, our schools lessened and diminished. I also have concerns about the long-term consequences of pegging budget growth below the district's annual run rate. Our costs are not increasing arbitrarily. Many of them, such as out-of-district placement, as the mayor has alluded to, have nearly doubled as a total percent of our overall budget in the last 5 years. And these are the result of unfunded mandates and downshifted financial obligations from the state. By artificially capping our budget below what is necessary to sustain education, we are effectively committing ourselves to a slow and steady erosion of school services and opportunities for our students. This is not a one-time setback. Rather, it represents a slow but inevitable decline, an entropy equation in which each year brings further reductions. I urge the council to reflect on the impact of these choices, not just for this budget cycle, but for the years ahead. The primary responsibility for these reductions rests not with the administration or the school board, but with the structural financial constraints imposed upon us. If we value our schools, we must ensure they are resourced to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Next up, Esther Kennedy on Portsmouth.
Good evening, Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. Mayor, I would like to thank you for taking away what was under your name. I was going to come forward and question the process. We have a process. It should go to the school board. The school board should make a decision, and then that budget becomes a school board budget and becomes to you folks. Like Aaron, I know the feelings of being pink slipped every year as a new teacher. No one should have to go through that. However, I have stood up here numerous times and asked you to look at any position that was leaving or retiring, and really look across our city of whether we need to replace that position. Whether it's schools, police, fire, and city government. I am upset as someone who has spent their whole career in special education, 26 years as a director of student service or a special ed director to some, that one of our rationale is our special needs students. I'm saddened by that. First of all, as someone who is a director of a public school, I'm proud to say I have not placed, in 17 years, a student out of district placement. I am proud to say I do not have self-contained classrooms. Yes, I'm only about 2/3 the size of Portsmouth. I understand that. But this is a bigger thing that people need to start looking at. How are we including our students in our public schools? How are we making them part of our community? Every one of these special needs students will be coming back to their community at some point when they turn 22. And will they have friends? Will they have associates? If we put them in an out-of-district placement and put them there for 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, they miss their connection. So I'm sad that that was brought up tonight as a rationale. I'm hoping that our school can look at that at another day, another time. But I ask that we let everything go through the process. And we ask for line item budgets. I have been at the fire. I have been at the police. I have not been to the school because I choose not to be there. But we have yet, besides the fire, gotten a line item budget for any of those entities. So yes, people are behind. Because by now I would have a line item budget that I could cross-reference. So there's a bigger issue here. And let's think about it, and let's get the job done, and let's lower our taxes for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Next up is Amber Buttermore.
Hi. My name is Amber Buttermore, and I live at 545 FW Hartford Drive. I have two daughters who attend public schools here in 5th and 7th. Our youngest has dyslexia and has received vital interventions through the school system since kindergarten. They have been essential for her success. Her first interventions for dyslexia began via Zoom in March 2020. Our oldest has struggled with math and relies on a school-based support and her IEP to stay on track. As a former educator, I know firsthand how budget cuts strain teachers, ultimately harm students and families. Tonight, I'm asking you to reconsider any cuts. I know things have changed, but to be thinking forwardly to be funding our schools. If you have not had young children over the last 5 years, you may not understand how they suffered greatly from the pandemic era restrictions, falling behind both academically and socially. Many are still struggling with those lingering effects. We don't talk about that much. Gaps in foundational skills, increased anxiety and absenteeism, and a need for intervention services that schools are already stretched thin to provide. Teachers and staff and families have worked tirelessly to help students recover. But without adequate, continued funding, those efforts will be severely undermined. When education funding is cut, the consequences are clear, and they lead to the following. Larger class sizes, making it harder for teachers to provide individualized instructions. Reduced intervention services, leaving struggling students without the help they need. And overburdened and stressed teachers, leading to burnout and turnover, which further disrupts learning. Strong schools are the foundation of a strong Portsmouth. They protect home values, they attract families, prepare students to contribute to our local economy. Cutting education is a short-sighted, shameful decision that will cost us far more in the long run. Do we ever want a Portsmouth where the wealthy will get their kids what they need, while the ones who can't afford to won't? I understand the challenge of balancing a budget, but our schools should not be the ones asked to sacrifice. I urge this council to consider my concerns and ensure that our schools receive any funding they need. Our students, our teachers, and our community deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Next up, Teacher Huda on the school budget.
Beecher Huda, 280 South Street. Again, I'm kind of struggling tonight because I don't know how people could come forward to speak in favor or against something that we haven't seen yet. Again, the process for school budgeting is clearly defined in our city charter and in our administrative code. Basically, it says, pursuant to section 7.9, every department shall submit a budget, including the charter departments. And it should be itemized by line item to the city manager by the 15th. This is only the 3rd of March. We haven't seen anything. I am looking forward to the line item budget and viewing the full city budget. And I do believe there's a meeting and a public hearing tomorrow night to do this. I would ask, has the full school board even seen the budget? I have a lot of questions, and I'm waiting to ask those questions, but I think a lot of this is premature. The school board needs a chance to put forward and look at the full budget before we start moving for or against and get questions asked from the public who are paying for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Next up is Michael Derheimer, school budget.
Good evening, all. Michael Derhammer, 280 Thaxter Road, Barbara Miller's old house for everybody who's been here long enough. Thank you all. You're my friends. You're my neighbors. I've voted for virtually all of you, so I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you'll hear us all out. Byron pretty much spoke for most of the things I was going to talk about, so what I'm going to say is just bullet points for future thought, please. People move to the Portsmouth school, or to Portsmouth for our schools. Having any decreases in the quality of our education will negatively impact the patina that Portsmouth has. Yes, it's beautiful, but it's also a great place to raise a child. To any individual that might come forward in the future that says, my kids are not in the school system any longer, why should I care about this? I'm not going to pay. Don't pull up the ladder behind you. To all the businesses that say, I cannot find adequate help, fund a school, you'll get better help. Portsmouth also attracts many of the top educators in the area. That's because we don't cut. We are a town that has funded and retains better staff. If we begin cutting, we are going to lose these educators to Hampton, to Exeter, to Oyster River, places that do not cut and that value their educators. Currently, a lot of the current Portsmouth employees, teachers, you okay, Mr. Tabor? Okay. Many of the teachers perform far beyond contract. They are giving more value to the city than they are paid for. If we begin cutting, they will begin to work to contract. We will lose value. And last, you saw the ski team here. My son and daughter are here. Every child you see when you walk down the street, please think of their future. What you come forward with is going to be their future. I think they're worth it. I believe you think they're worth it. Please consider that. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. And last on the signups for public comment here is School Board Chair Nancy Kleberg.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to begin by thanking the City Council for working so well with the school board for so many years. I've been around for a while. I actually have been an elected official for 25 years in the City of Portsmouth. The first big project I was involved with was the addition and renovation of Portsmouth High School in 2006. We received 55% reimbursement from the state of New Hampshire. Then the middle school in 2013, where we received 33% reimbursement from the state. I think you all know what the reimbursement rate is right now. A big, fat 0. That's just an example of why I am so grateful that the City Council has worked so well with our board. A few years ago, when we knew we had to do something about Lister Academy, the council stepped in and worked collaboratively to provide funding so that our students could have a state-of-the-art space to learn effectively. Currently, we have funding in the CIP to do much-needed improvements at New Franklin School. I could go on and on with many more examples. Many communities don't have this kind of cooperation and collaboration. I know I'm deeply grateful. I have to find page 2. So now on to the budget. The board has been struggling with the percentage that was presented by the council. However, Superintendent Zach has been working tirelessly with city leadership to present to the board a reasonable plan. In the past, our administration has offered early retirement incentive packages, and this year was no different. We usually get a good response, And again, this year was no different. Zach is examining the positions that will be affected by the package incentive and will make a presentation to our board tomorrow night. Our special ed costs have increased significantly this year, and this presents a huge challenge to the board and the administration. In addition, the increased COLA costs due to the ongoing union negotiations are extremely challenging, and once again, you guys are willing to work with us on that. In summary, please know that we are working hard to present to the council a budget that is as close to the percentage as we possibly can. You will be pleased to know, oh, I never knew how that worked. You will be pleased to know that recent research has disclosed that our test scores in our Portsmouth schools are back to what they were pre-COVID. We are very proud of this. We are proud of our faculty, our administrators, our students, our staff, and our families for making this possible. And deep gratitude for those who are here tonight to speak on behalf of the school budget. It's gratifying to know that people really care about the quality of our schools and doing what's best for our students. And Mayor McEachran, thank you for talking to me in the corridors of City Hall a few times about the school budget. We seem to bump into each other and end up having a great conversation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Nancy. So on Zoom, we have Katie Hayden.
Hello, Kate Hayden, 1 Ash Street. And I'm here to talk about something other than the elementary school playgrounds tonight. Here to talk about the budget as it relates to the schools. As a resident with school-age kids, I'd really like you to think about what capping the total budget at a 2.9% increase would mean to the schools, even though it sounds like you're in discussions for changing that. Nobody likes when their taxes increase, but equally true, nobody likes when services are cut. I hope that the city council members and school board members can work together to avoid having to make cuts that would so severely impact the school department. I don't claim to know all the ins and outs of this process, but I do know that it's important to speak up when something's important to you. For me, such potential significant cuts to the school department are just not okay. Our students need more support than ever. Teachers need to know that they have secure employment in Portsmouth so that we don't lose them to other districts. This potential cut could come at a great cost, not only to our students and teachers, but to the community as a whole. Please proceed carefully and thoughtfully to really consider what this would mean for our community. We need to invest in the education of the youth in our community and demonstrate to the teachers and staff how much we value them. Byron said it more eloquently than I will, but I couldn't agree more that yearly reductions mean the erosion of the high quality education that we've become accustomed to here in Portsmouth. I hope that as our elected officials, you work collaboratively with the school department to come up with a creative solution to manage the city budget to prevent this from happening. Thank you.
Hey, Kate. Nobody else didn't sign up? All right. Find my agenda. Thank you all for coming to public comment. We're going to move on. Look forward to the budget being presented back to the City Council after the school board votes on it. And appreciate everyone for sharing your commitment and love of education. It is one of the things that makes Portsmouth, Portsmouth. So enjoy the rest of your evening. If you're not sticking around for the rest of the agenda, which by grabbing your coats, I'm getting the sense that you're not. All right, we will go on to public comment, public hearings, second reading of ordinance, public hearing Second reading of ordinance amendments, Chapter 10, zoning ordinance, zoning map, Article 4, zoning district and use regulations, Section 10.421, district location and boundaries, Section 10.421.10 be amended to remove 185 Orchard Street, tax map 152, lot 2-1 from the historic district overlay.
Your Honor, we have Planning Manager Peter Stith to make a brief verbal presentation.
Good evening. And if you want to bring up the map that's in your packet, that might be good reference. 185 Orchard was part of 15 Lafayette Road. That was a parcel that was subdivided in July 2023. So the original lot had frontage on Lafayette Road, and the whole parcel was included in the historic district boundary. Since it was subdivided, the lot now fronts on Orchard, and none of the other, sorry.
Do I have the ability to pull it up?
I think you
I
can.
do. I don't have it, Peter, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. You have it in the packet that shows the district boundary. So the owner, the Raffertys, have moved forward with applying for a building permit and realized that it was in the historic district, where no other property along Orchard is in the historic district. So they've requested to be removed from the historic district. This went to the planning board in October, and they voted to recommend removal of this property from the historic district. And then in January, it went to the HDC, and they also voted to remove it. So pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, I'm here. But
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks,
all right,
Peter.
thanks.
Now, any city council questions? Councilor Bagley.
I've brought this up before. I'll bring it up again. The street I live on, Chauncey, is also one of these kind of orphan HDC. I would hope that the HDC would move quickly to remove these properties that shouldn't be in the HDC from the HDC, so that those residents don't have the undue burden of every time they go to replace windows or put up solar panels, they have to go forward with the HDC. Since we're doing it for this property, I think it's important that we aggressively do it for the rest of the properties that are in a similar situation.
So noted. Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'll touch on that, Councilor Bagley. I certainly agree. And it is, in keeping genuine with the historic district, you really only want the front row. It's kind of ungenuine to go back and, just kind of draw the lines wherever you want. So this will actually enhance our historic district, cleaning it up and making it, the way it should be. But I look forward to, thank you.
All right. We'll now open it up to public hearing. Any public hearing speakers to or against on the removal of this property from the HDC?
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. You folks have to decide whether we want historical Portsmouth or not. When you start taking away one property and another, you start losing your historical parts of Portsmouth. It is a pain to be in the historical district, I know. I've lived in it a long time. I actually have lived in Portsmouth long enough to be part of Historical A and Historical B, which was out on Bartlett Street. And we had to go forward on things we did on Bartlett Street. They got rid of Historical B and made Historical A basically where it is today. Every time we get rid of an historical line, you're changing Portsmouth. And maybe that's your decision. It sounds like that's your vote already. That's pretty sad. Because what is the one reason people come here? Because we're different. We are a historical entity. Otherwise, why don't I go down to Boston, who just did all that beautiful waterfront? They remodeled it all. and I have no reason to leave. I hear it all the time. I have thousands of people that walk by my house in the summer, and they talk about how quaint the historical streets look and how they enjoy the walk, how they enjoy coming to Portsmouth to see our historical history. You start taking away and eroding that history, it will no longer be. And you're going to have to make that decision, and you're going to be held accountable for it. Because right now, people have fought over the years to keep the boundaries. They've set those boundaries. At some point, you have to have a boundary. And again, I know it's a pain. I live it. I've gone through numerous construction projects with it, and I understand the difficulties of it. However, I also think it's very important to keep Portsmouth an historical city. You have a picture of salt piles that was donated, that we all just celebrated. That's part of our historical city. When I was sitting up there on council, at one point in my career, I was fighting a hotel going in to the port, to change the port. And the council at that time agreed that it should not be changed because people come and look at our port. They come and visit our winding streets. But if you folks are giving in, you've made a big decision. And I guess, I hear from Mr. Begley once in a while, well, why do people live here if they don't want, the change? And I guess my question is, why do you live here if you want change like that? I'm all for looking at hotels. I'm all for looking at Lafayette. You haven't heard me complain about it. But I do believe if you want people to come and sit at your little restaurants and enjoy your shops, you need to have something that sets you apart. And one of the things that sets us apart is our historical downtown, our historical community, and what we represent of 400 years. So I sense you've made your decision. However, I also know that I've made my peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Any other speakers to, for, or against?
Paige Trace, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but what I heard Esther just say regarding our historic district struck a note. I don't live in the historic district anymore, but I realize where I do live just how important that district is to this town. And so I say with all due respect, Mr. Bagley, and Mr. Blaylock, that if you don't like where your house is, then it's up to you to do something about it. If you don't like that you're in the historic district and you're there, then do something about it. But don't sit there and say that you aren't conflicted with your vote, because you are. If you live in the historic district and you want that changed, then you're conflicted with adding change to everyone else. And as Esther said, taking one house away is one more house. And as a past member of the HDC, council representative once, I have to tell you, what I'm hearing about the erosion of Portsmouth Historic District makes me very sad indeed. It's a low day for Portsmouth that you're just so willing to gut and erode and get rid of the historic district. Maybe that's what you're intending all along. But please, pray tell, don't think that Portsmouth's going to be the popular seafaring town, as wonderful as she is, when you get rid of the entire historic district, Mr. Bagley. And so I say to you, think long and hard about your solar panels and windows that don't quite work, because that's part of the charm of an 18th century house. And I know firsthand, and I miss it. So think twice before you all erode the historic district. And I wish you all the best of luck with this one, because I know where you're going to vote. And I know what will happen. But thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Paige. Any other speakers, to, for, or against? Seeing no one rise and no one on Zoom, I will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Your Honor, I'd move to pass second reading and schedule a third and final reading at March 17th, 2025 City Council meeting.
Second.
Any further questions or deliberations? Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did have a few more questions. This lot in particular at 185 Orchard Street, my understanding is that this was a subdivision of a lot that was initially on Lafayette Road, but then the back portion, which is on Orchard, was subdivided off. Is that correct?
That is correct. The original boundary followed the lots along Middle Road in Lafayette. Otherwise, it was 150 feet back from Middle Street. So this property was subdivided, and now it fronts on Orchard Street. And so no other property on Orchard Street, and the house will front on Orchard Street, while the original house on 15 Lafayette still fronts on Lafayette and still is in the historic district.
So let me follow up with, so there's not a historic house at 185 Orchard Street?
Correct. It's a vacant lot.
Thank you.
Councilor Blaylock, then Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I've been in touch with the owners of this lot, and they haven't been able to even pour a foundation or anything because they don't, they're waiting for this process to kind of happen. But that's been costing them money. That's been construction supplies, everything's been going up. But they've been nice, they've been patient. But I will say this is an old backyard of an old big estate. Orchard Street is not a historic street. So it would be ingenuine for us to actually put Orchard Street in the historic district. It would be false history. So I'll stick with that.
Thank you, Councilor Blaylock. Councilor Bagley.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I think it's important to clear for the record that I do not live in the historic district. I live on a street that runs parallel to Middle Street, Lafayette, and one side of the street, Chauncey, because of the arbitrary way that the HDC was created with 100-foot boundaries, I believe it was. Half of Chauncey got included with that. Those are my neighbors. However, the side of Chauncey I live on is not, nor has ever been part of the HDC to the best of my knowledge. Certainly not why I've owned the house, so I'm certainly not conflicted in this vote. But I will touch on one other thing. My duty as a counselor, I always think, is first to the residents. And I constantly hear people say, oh, the people won't come visit us. We won't have as many tourists. I think that should be secondary to the rights of the residents of the city. So it's important that we have an HDC, but we shouldn't take the HDC so far that we're stomping on the rights of our residents for tourists.
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. Any other comments? I will simply note that this is something that went through the planning board, went through the HDC, is now back to us both with a recommendation to move forward. And when we're talking about the historic district, whether or not you believe in it or not, you should believe in, at least in my opinion, having the historic district as reflective of the history of Portsmouth as possible. That means when there is something like a subdivision, do not arbitrarily push the HDC onto another place where a new house will be constructed, and have to go through that process. It makes it harder for the HDC, makes it harder for the resident, and it does nothing it does nothing to protect. In fact, I would say it erodes the HDC when we extend its borders beyond what we've already agreed to it being. So with that, I will support it, and I will call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, public hearing and second reading of ordinance amendment to Chapter 1 Administrative Code, Article 4, Commissions and Authorities, Section 1.413-Sustainability Committee. We first have a presentation by Councilor Den.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Sustainability Committee had drafted these changes, and we're asking that they be voted upon tonight at second reading. They essentially do three things. The first one is it changes the number of students that have a voting role on the committee. When it became a standing committee, we had initially pushed for 2 students because we had 2 students almost always at meetings, if not more. It turns out this has caused an issue in creating a quorum. So what this does here is it will just allow one of the students there to have a vote, but as many students as would like are allowed to attend the meetings, and we strongly encourage that. The second thing this ordinance does is a bit of house cleaning. The language which is in front of you here and all crossed out, that was the language that was developed to transition it from a blue ribbon committee to a standing committee. That's no longer necessary. So there's no need to have that still be in the ordinance at this time. And the third thing which it does is it allows the committee to have up to 2 chairs if it so chooses.
Hey, Councilor Denton. Any questions for Councilor Denton? We'll now open the public comment. Speaking to, for, or against this change to Sustainability Committee? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Any additional questions?
Your Honor, I move to pass second reading and schedule a third and final reading at the March 17th, 2025 City Council meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Your Honor,
opposed?
I ask to suspend the rules to bring forward third and final reading tonight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Your Honor, I move to pass third reading of this ordinance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right. Next up, third and final reading of ordinance amendment to Chapter 1 Administrative Code, Article 16, Adoption of Fees by Budget Resolution, Section 1.160, Purpose, Section 1.1602, Procedure, Section 1.1603, Exclusion, Section 1.1604, Default of the Ordinance of the City of Portsmouth.
Your Honor, I move to pass third and final reading of the ordinance as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
City Manager Conard.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have 2 items this evening. The first is a request to restore involuntarily merged lots at the address located, for property located at 25 Sims Avenue, which is known as map block lot number 0233-0071-0000, located in the SRB zoning district. The applicant, Mr. Michael Roylos, has provided preliminary documentary support for his request, and we will, as part of our research, require additional information and verification. So as part of the process that we've adopted, what we've asked as an appropriate motion here would be to refer this request to the planning board and to the city assessor for a report back to the council.
Your Honor, I move to refer this request to the planning board and the city assessor for a report back.
Second.
Any further discussion? Let's simply note that this is something that keeps getting extended on the state level. So there's a ability for anybody with a involuntarily merged lot to petition the city council. We have adopted this policy under City Manager Conard to put the work on the planning board and the assessor's office to do the work on this and then to report back on that. And what we typically look for are things like, or what Roseanne looks for, I'm not doing any of the work, but deeds and records to establish whether or not they are merged or involuntarily, because back in the day, we would just squish them together, and you have a right under New Hampshire law to have those lots unmerged as long as you have not treated them as kind of, one specific lot built on it, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have one of those, you always have this available option to you, and we've hopefully streamlined this, and we'll get the report back and be able to vote on it with that report. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Item number 2 is a license extension request for a home improvement project located at 50 South Street, South School Street, Unit 3, shown on the assessor's map as tax map 101, lot 60. And this property has been in remodeling for some time, and their current license for the use of a dumpster expires today. And in order to accommodate a delay that the contractor experienced in the receipt of materials for the project, the request is to extend the use of this license from March 4th, which is tomorrow, through May 2nd for a total of 60 days, or a total license fee of $345. And all departments that have relevant review and approval have approved of the extension, and we're looking for your approval this evening.
Your Honor, I move that the city manager be authorized to execute and accept the license extension to encumber a parking space in the parking lot that abuts South School Street Park as requested.
Second.
Councilor Cook, question?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a question for the city manager. I believe this is the second extension for this particular construction project.
I don't believe so. I believe this is the first, but I'm looking to the city attorney to confirm that.
I don't know if it's the second one, but I did hear today that the delay had to do with the materials being produced for the project, and that's the reason for the extension.
I don't have evidence of a second extension, so I'd have to look into that, but the license we have in place expires today.
Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to note that this is a very difficult area of the city for parking, and it's particularly challenging. This location in particular, there's just not a lot of parking for residents, and a lot of these houses don't have dedicated parking, including for this building. So I would just encourage them to, I know that construction is not easy to get finished quickly, but I would encourage them to try to finish by the May date, because it becomes much more challenging when we hit summer time in that neighborhood. So.
Certainly. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
We have next up the consent agenda.
Your Honor, I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have email correspondence.
Your Honor, I move to accept and place on file.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Skipping over me, and on to Councilor Tabor.
Thanks, Your Honor. Two items that have come up through the committees, not nearly as important as the school budget, but good housekeeping nonetheless. We had the fee committee meeting. I gave a brief summary in the packet, and we had a good discussion about the sidewalk obstruction ordinance. In the past, we've charged $75 for a table and $10 per chair, and a lot of the restaurants downtown have taken advantage of that. We had discussion in the governance committee because last year the Hearth came to us they had a lot of tables, creating a lot of seating, and they asked, since they had put those out there at their expense, that we waive the fee, and we did waive the fee. So we had two different practices and how to reconcile those two different practices. And one argument was that everybody should pay for their tables and chairs. The other was that if those chairs and tables are for public use, that we should waive the fee. They should still be permitted, but waive the fee as we did for the Hearth. That discussion went to the fee committee, and the fee committee agreed with the point of view of waiving the fees. So that was the recommendation. Normally, we would vote on all of the fee revisions when the budget's adopted in June, but because we have to get the sidewalk obstruction permits going in April, we would need a council decision to waive those fees. So that was the unanimous vote on this question by the fee committee, and it was the advice of staff that we bring it to the council now, so that you guys, so that the council, we could decide if that's what we want to do. I should put a motion forward. So I would move to eliminate the $75 table fee and the $10 chair fee under the sidewalk obstruction ordinance, Chapter 9, Article 5, Section 504C, effective immediately so long as the tables and chairs are open to general use, not just for patrons of the business seeking the permit.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a couple questions on this. Would this still require a permit to have a?
Yes.
Okay.
Proof of insurance.
And proof for insurance. Okay, good. Yeah, those are, I guess, my biggest concerns. Just looking at this, you are providing a public good, I guess, but you're also kind of, you're designing the outdoors of Portsmouth. There's some that have done it in very tasteful, some are very, very welcoming. But in the past, back in the early 90s and stuff, there was, people would put them out kind of at will and then not manage them, not maintain them, maybe create a dangerous situation. I just don't want to create a free-for-all kind of situation. That was my biggest concern.
Yeah, no, the permit, the city still has to review, because it's an obstruction, how it's obstructing the sidewalk.
Yep.
And what the impact is on the flow of pedestrian traffic.
Okay. Because no, my restaurant's down on the water, but there's a lot of us, we're all right next to each other. And if the River House starts putting out tables and chairs, and then the Waterview Grill starts putting out tables and chairs, and then, it just, so I'm glad to hear that it's still be permitted and you'll have to require insurance. So, thank you.
Assistant Mayor?
Thank you,
Then
Your Honor.
Councilor Beck.
I was maybe one of the lone voices in the governance committee that did not agree with waiving this fee. Partly because I think that while it is a very small amount of money, we do look at, say, our Market Square refresh plan, and we're looking at how can the city fund some more open and free and more inviting public spaces. And I understand to a lot of people, places like Hearth or my business who puts out benches in the front and we pay this fee. And again, I want to make sure everyone understands that this fee is separate from closed in dining spaces, roped off public spaces. I just feel that as we slowly erode some of these fees that have been embedded in our budget for a long time, I'm worried about where we fill that gap. Yes, this may only be $8,000 to $15,000 a year, $19,000 if you go back a couple of years prior to COVID, upwards of that amount. But when we start to waive these fees consistently, we're eroding any type of revenue that would allow us to reinvest into our community managed by the city. So I'm going to abstain anyways because I use this program, and so I'm just going to abstain from this vote. But I would just like to put it on the record that I don't support this. I think that it is a line item in your prepared business budget. I think that we have done a lot of work in the city for outdoor dining and obstruction permits, making them more feasible. And I think the average of, most places like myself, 2 benches, La Maison, 2 chairs. Of course, when we're looking at the Hearth, it is a much different conversation because that's $6,500, $7,000. But when you're looking at the average small business that is using this, you're looking at maybe $200, $300 for year-round use. I think that is also should be noted with the encumbrance fees, that they are year-round, unlike outdoor dining, which runs from May to November. So when you take that and you divide that over potential use of $365 for places like Cafe Killam or My Place or any of the other things, I think you can really look at it for a way. So I understand our West wanting to support small businesses, and I can already see that some councilors are going to jump on that. As a small business owner, I can still understand that I need to pay fees to operate my business. I still have to pay my grease trap cleaning fee, my all of these things. So I just think that we have to be careful of what we're doing to benefit businesses and the weight of residential.
Councilor Bagley, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to thank the fee committee or governance for coming forward with this. A lot of residents, their favorite place to sit in Market Square is those small bistro tables and chairs, which are actually not provided by the city. They're provided by, I don't even know the name of the restaurant anymore. It used to be Toscana, used to be Breaking New Grounds. Those bistro tables and chairs, that restaurant pays money to put those out. And since it's no longer really a coffee shop, there's not really as far as I can tell, a great benefit to them, but I think it's a great benefit for the city. We do have the large picnic tables that the city provides and pays for. One of the biggest things we saw with the Market Square redesign working groups was that people wanted more places to sit and relax. And if we can get the private sector to pay for it, I think that's even better than having the city pay for it. So I think this is a great move forward. If it's sequestered space that you're only using for your restaurant, absolutely pay a fee. But if it's public benefit where you're providing a place for people to sit, I think this is the right move. And I would contend that in the grand scheme of things, our revenue numbers are going to look better when we provide an atmosphere like this, when we take in all the different revenue sources we get from the downtown, if we continue to provide a welcoming, inviting place with lots of places to sit.
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. Any other questions? Comments?
I have one question, and this you may not have this answer. This question is the city manager. Do we have data? I guess my question is part of this argument, and this is essentially in rebuttal to Councilor Bagley, is that businesses aren't doing it. And so I guess my question would be, and this is just maybe a report back for after this vote, just for my personal knowledge and residential knowledge, is maybe a year-to-year comparative for encumbrance table and chair permits from maybe 19 to last year. Because I think part of my argument against this is that we're already doing it. And so every business, I believe, and this is why I would like the backup of the information, that we are now waiving these fees, have been paying these fees. And so I guess I'm looking to see if over the last year, besides Hearth, in any new business that now is doing this, I would like to just see those metrics.
Happy to provide that.
Thank you.
I don't have it on me.
I assume that. It's a random number.
Oh, Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to reiterate the importance of creating public spaces where our community feels welcome and feels like they can enjoy spaces in our downtown area without spending money. And I think that is really the one thing that we saw as a major request in the Market Square redesign sessions, is the community members want spaces where they can go and they can sit and they can be part of the community, but without having to necessarily sit down and spend money that they might not have in the community. And at the same time, we hear a lot from our small businesses that they're struggling in the last year. Especially, we've had kind of a slower year in Portsmouth for tourism in the last year. We're seeing a decline in the number of people who are frequenting not just restaurants but businesses as well, and we need to make sure that we're preserving as much of the character as we can in the city of Portsmouth, and especially in that downtown corridor which is the location where we mostly see these tables and chairs that are available to the public. So I'm hoping that this will continue to incentivize businesses to continue to provide tables and chairs. I don't want that to be the thing that they cut out of their budget because they're struggling with finding staffing and they have to increase pay, so then they cut their tables and chairs outside, because I think that is really a benefit that our community wants and that our residents want.
Councilor Blaylock?
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry to take another stab. I know we're here just because we removed the fee from the tables and chairs at the Hearth Garden. I voted against that at the time because it wasn't following the letter of the law, the policy we had set forth. So I mean, now that that got voted through and now we're here, so I'm going to be voting against this because I honestly think this program worked fine. Any money, I know it's a small amount of money, but any money we take out of fees or something, we're just putting it back, that cost back on the residents. We saw the property tax value shifted towards the residents away from commercial. So I know this is a little bit, but I don't think I'm not going to support this.
Councilor Tabor?
Just on the revenue preservation argument, I think it was $15,000 or so back in 2019. That was when the only way you could have outdoor dining was through these sidewalks licenses. No? That's my recollection at any rate. And also the $8,000 that we've got in, that staff provided us is for all the sidewalk obstructions. That includes the A-frames, any advertising. So I think that the ongoing amount of cafe table revenue is significantly smaller.
I'll pass the gavel. So I guess the question that I have, one, I can't remind me, is there a fee for the, like the sidewalk signs or no?
Yes, yes, that's part of this, the same $75 fee.
Okay.
So if the A-frames are, correct me if I'm wrong, City Mayor, A-frames are $75. If a retailer wants to put a rack out, technically they should be getting an encumbrance fee. So.
And is this waiving that entirely?
Yep.
Oh, so
Yes.
just for
tables and
chairs.
chairs.
Okay, so I guess like the thing that, again, did vote against it last time when it was an exception based on, or just an exception for the rule, voted against it because that felt like that was not the correct way to do public policy. I understand the reason to waive this for the ones that are doing a lot of tables and chairs. I get that because we might not be, to permit 1 or 2 benches, it's probably not that much more money to permit, I don't know, 50 or 70, like Jason's down there going to be enforcing, both of those things. And so being able to understand like where the cost is for us, is it a per seat basis that we're experiencing this cost, or is it like a per restaurant basis that we're experiencing the cost? And so I feel like just throwing it all out and then also not including the A-frames and the retailer aspect of this and just saying just for sidewalks or just for tables and chairs, we're not going to charge the administrative fee. And again, we started with the administrative fee because people got kind of ticked off about all the stuff that was on the sidewalk. So we said, okay, well, we'll start putting permits on that, but we're not going to pass that cost on to residents, so we're going to actually start charging a permit fee for this. And it wasn't necessarily, we probably didn't imagine that it would be past, 4 or 5 tables, up to the levels that we have. So I guess I would love to be able to see and vote for something that was more encompassing of all the businesses downtown and also takes into a consideration that there is a cost associated with this. We don't want to pass that cost on, but maybe we should look at a top level cap that we are not getting any more money back from, we're not making more money on a specific application just because there's more chairs and not more work. And hopefully that, if that's a fee committee that goes back to the fee committee, I'd understand that, or if we could workshop it here, maybe we could do so.
There you go.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor, for your comments. I should note that when we initially discussed this at Governance Committee, I had suggested that we waive all those fees, including for A-frames. And so the challenge, I think, and the reason that it's coming back to us the way it is today is that there has to be a decision on tables and chairs now because of the permitting schedule for outdoor dining and for when those permits come in. And so the reason the fee study committee looked at this first was because of that. We could still move forward with a requested change for A-frames as well. But I think it's important that we continue to have the permitting process in place so that we don't end up with a proliferation of tables, chairs, and signs in places we don't want them downtown that are where they're obstructing sidewalks. So, so I'm perfectly amenable to looking at waiving those fees also for A-frames, but I think that this was just a timing issue because of when the permits come in for outdoor dining.
Councilor Bagley?
Thank you, Your Honor. I actually disagree with waiving the fees for the other obstructions. To me, this all comes back to, and I always thought it was crazy that we charged a business for all those bistro tables and chairs. And a lot of residents have expressed concern to me over the last couple of years that they feel like there's less of them out there. than there used to be. I don't think that's true. I think they're just spread out a little bit differently. But I would hate to see our fees result in all those bistro tables and chairs in Market Square going away. When you provide a table and chair, that provides value to our residents because they can sit and use that table and chair. And as much as, I appreciate the very humorous A-frame signs outside of some of our stores, and I encourage our retailers to have, racks out on the sidewalks, I don't think that really provides that value to our residents that a place that you can sit and rest provides. So I'm not doing this from a business perspective. I'm doing this from I think it's a value to our residents to have a place to sit and rest without having to buy something.
Councilor Brody.
Yeah, I would agree. The tables and chairs that are put out for people, anyone to sit on, they don't have to buy any food from a restaurant. That's just available to everybody. I disagree with waiving the fees for advertising. I think that's I think the A-frames and any obstruction that is advertising, I think probably should still have fees.
Okay, well, it seems as though there's not necessarily a consensus to workshop this on the fly here, that there's some counselors that feel as though selecting restaurants over retailers from a standpoint of permitting, is acceptable or not acceptable.
Your Honor, I do want to point out that at least one retailer puts out tables and chairs, and that's the Puzzle Store. So I don't think it's a restaurant retail thing. I think it's a tables and chair versus A-frame thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would probably disagree in terms of like the majority here. We can't speak to, all of them, but certainly, but I do, I hope we could have had something that came back that understood, maybe the nuance with the amount of time that goes into permitting these, and while it probably doesn't take more time to permit 20 versus 10, or maybe it does, City Manager.
I'd have to check with the staff on that.
All right. But I guess in terms of, I would, without having confirmation, just feeling, going down there and making sure it's monitored and not putting on more, Jason's going to respond to those calls as he responds to all calls with the smile on his face. And so I hope we could have done that. It's tougher to support that because it doesn't take into account the A-frames and the differences for the businesses there. And I still don't feel as though from the problem that we had last year with one restaurateur requesting a waiving of the fees because they were exorbitant. I'd hope we could have looked at that and said, what would be a reasonable amount per business to establish for this, and maybe not a per table, and move away from that. But since we can't, I can't support this in its current form, and we'll be voting no.
Do you want a roll call?
I guess we have a roll call. We have one abstention.
Okay. Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Abstain.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
No.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
No.
Motion passes.
Nice, as they say.
All right.
And
Second one on Councilor Tabor. All right.
This comes up through the Housing Committee. When we passed the GNOD ordinance, you'll remember we had 3 ways that a developer in the GNOD could get more density. They could gift the city a parcel of land. They could actually build the affordable housing to the level that our ordinance says, which is 10%, or they could do a payment in lieu. And since that ordinance has been created, it necessitates creating a payment in lieu fee, which the city's never had before. So how do you come up with a price for not building an affordable unit, affordable being 60% of AMI for renters and 100% for purchase. And the Housing Committee looked at a number of the methods used in Maine and Massachusetts and recommended, we decided to use the value gap method, which calculates the difference in rental between market rate and below market rate, or in purchase. And in the rent case, applies a capitalization rate to convert that into a unit cost. So I guess Peter's not with us at this point, but so RKG, the city's consultant, calculated a table for 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms at various levels of percent of AMI, and that would be the first ever payment in lieu table that we would have. As we all know, there's one major property owner in the Gateway Neighborhood Overlay District who is giving us a parcel of land, but if there are others, if there were other parcels that came up, this payment in lieu could be used. And it's a chance to pilot and find out how we would do payment in lieu. And lastly, any revenue that comes into the city would be put into the Housing Trust Fund so that we could use that to preserve existing units of affordable housing or create new units or any other use that we decide the Housing Trust Fund can do. And that trust fund's mission is to create and preserve affordable housing in the city. And that trust document has gone out to be reviewed by the trustees of trust funds, but it should be coming back to the council, as I understand it. So the motion would be move to approve the payment in lieu table, fee table recommended by the Housing Committee as shown in the packet, subject to update next year and every 2 years after that by the Fee Schedule Study Committee or City Council. Proceeds will go to the city's Housing Trust Fund for the purpose of creating and preserving below market rate housing in Portsmouth.
Second.
Any discussion? Assistant Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will say, if residents have and fellow councilors have looked at the table, it can be a little confusing, but this is why the Housing Committee felt comfortable going forward with RKG, who has been our consultant for affordable housing. Their recommendation, taking the data that was, they had filtered through based on Portsmouth costs of per unit building below and at market rentals and or for sale housing. So I know that I looked at it and had to kind of work through it, and we did it again in class. I'm sorry, in committee. Just feel like class of the day.
Don't like class with RKG.
Yes, but I wanted to reference that the RKG study is online, the full study where all of the information was pulled for and from that report for this chart. So if there's anyone looking to get more understanding, I would refer you to that full report.
Councilor Lombardi, then Councilor Bagwell.
Yeah, in reading through this, it drew some comparisons to other communities and areas, and I guess one of the questions that arose for me was that Portsmouth has limited land space, and I'm wondering if some of these figures that RKG had used considered that in their numbers.
Yep, my understanding from the RKG consultant is yes, they considered that. They considered redevelopment. They considered gateway zoning. They considered our current ordinance, and all of these pulling together actual numbers for building permit, like I said, cost per unit pricing. So they did, and the Housing Committee will be coming back with more information from RKG as we just got a state grant, right?
Yep.
State
$64,000.
$64,000 to work with them, continuing some of this work.
Great. Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think this is a great idea. I know over the past 15 years or so, there's been a lot of developments that have not taken advantage of the affordable housing waivers, and this is a chance for us to maybe get something instead of zero in places where it just can't pencil out. The only question I have, has this been vetted with legal, or is that still to happen?
No, legal has taken a look at this and reviewed it.
Excellent, then I'll be happy to support this.
Thank you.
Yep. The only other thing I'd add is, I think this is practical for, say, a 10-unit building, where, as you say, it pencils out on the margin, and this option allows the money to go into the trust fund, allows the developer to have a successful development. So it could be a win-win that way.
Yeah, agree. It's also difficult to manage properties once they are under affordable housing. That's one of the things that we've received is just without the expertise in that, a developer might shy away from doing that type of work, but not certainly through lack of compassion or believing in, the desire to do it. Just they're not with the skill set to be able to manage it long term. Heard that from a number of developers, just the ongoing conversations with the tenants can take up a lot of work, and making sure they continue to qualify for the affordable housing. So seems like this could solve that, and look forward to seeing if there's any other places outside of the GNOD that this could be budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up. Council Moreau, who is sick. Feel better, Council Moreau, but I think the city manager has your update.
I do. As a fellow planning board member, the conversation at the February 20th meeting did not propose any formal changes, just a long discussion about whether to adopt some or most of the amendments. I do know that a written update from the planning staff as part of the March 17th packet will be part of what you see when the amendment comes back for third and final reading. So that is that update.
All right, no approval of grants or donations. Now we have informational items.
I have three quick ones, Your Honor. The first one is a reminder to the public and the council in particular that we are looking forward to wrapping up the update to the bicycle and pedestrian plan. And as such, we've got a public meeting scheduled for a week from tonight at 6:30 here in council chambers for members of the public and the council to review public engagement input received to date and to review the draft recommendations from our consultant. And the plan will then be finalized for adoption and acceptance subsequent to this final public meeting. So the idea is if you wanted to ask questions or hear more, it would be a great opportunity to do that. Otherwise, it will come to the council for acceptance at a subsequent meeting. The second one is an interesting pilot that we'd like to try, and we'd like to support the staff that operate our customer-facing departments. And that would be the tax office, the assessor's office, and the clerk's office. And they never get a moment to meet as a staff. They never have a moment for uninterrupted time to meet or to train or to plan as a unit. What we'd like to do to help support them in that effort is to delay the public opening of the three customer-facing departments on the second floor here for 3 Wednesdays in March, starting not this week, but next week, the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th. And what that will allow them to do is to do all sorts of things they cannot do when they're serving the public. So we will message this everywhere we can. Once we do that for 3 Wednesdays in a row, we will then assess as department heads how successful that was, take into account any feedback, good or bad, we receive from the public, and come back to you with a more perhaps permanent recommendation moving forward. Perhaps it's one morning a month that they can take advantage of these kinds of opportunities that they currently cannot. So thank you for your indulgence as we work to offer that for the staff.
In terms of the time, what is the
It will be
time?
from 8 to 10 a.m. So the staff will be here at 8, as they always are, but the offices will remain closed to the public until 10 a.m. We will start to message that starting tomorrow. There will be all sorts of notifications on the glass door and on the hallway and in social media, so it will not be a surprise. And the notification that lets people know we aren't open to the public for those 2 hours will provide information on how to access certain features online. So more to come on that, and thank you for the indulgence. And lastly, we have an update on outdoor dining, which dovetails nicely with the conversation we just had. The all the folks who were part of outdoor dining last year got an email, and it reminds them that the applications that will start to be accepted today for outdoor dining. Everyone who did participate last year is asked to submit a new online application, and this year there will be similar questions and perhaps new questions and communication with staff. So just because you had approval last year, it doesn't mean you simply get to start all over again. We do need to see the layout of the tables and chairs, and we still need to inspect and review that. So weather permitting, the Department of Public Works will begin placing the traffic barriers as they are approved, and starting the last week in April. Licenses will have a May 1st, 2025 start date and will expire the day after Columbus Day, which this year is October 14th. And at that time, they will be removing barriers. So the applications are online. Our planning and sustainability staff are standing by to help, and we encourage folks to apply early. Thank you.
Anything under miscellaneous? Councillor Bagley.
Not actually under miscellaneous, just a question. A number of restaurants and people have asked about extending that. I think last year somebody wanted to extend the outdoor dining to the film festival weekend. Is there a position of DPW or the city? Do we think this date works well, or would that be something we could entertain at some point?
Historically, it's gotten pretty cold, and there hasn't been a desire on the part of the restaurants to maintain it after a certain point, oftentimes the end of September. It could be that we have an unusually cold or warm season. And I do know the film festival, I don't know if the date stays the same all the time or if it fluctuates. So I think we're following the ordinance right now. We'd have to amend the ordinance in order to accommodate a different date.
Thank you.
Councilor Bullock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am excited to announce the Portsmouth High School basketball team. We're playing the first playoff game at home on Wednesday at 6 o'clock. They're the number 2 seed, but I encourage you to go support them. Also, Great Bay Community College basketball team. They made the playoff. They won their conference for the first time, and now they're in their national tournament. And the girls ice hockey team is the number 1 seed in their division. Yeah. So best of luck to all those teams, and get some more championships.
Go Clippers. All right. Wait, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Mayor Portsmouth.